Hi, this is Danielle Daws with a tutorial for UnityTV. Today I'm showing you a set of cards that are clean and simple, quick to make, but also pack a punch with the technique. The technique that I'm using is called Embossed Resist. Sometimes it's called Emerging Colour or Trapped Emboss. Basically what it is I'm clear embossing a pattern over the top of patterned paper. So the patterned paper that I'm using is by Webster's Pages, that's the Girlland set, and the stamp that I'm using is called Encircle Me. The reason these two work so well together for this technique is because the stamp is quite grungy and has some great textural effects, and the pattern that I've chosen on each piece of paper is quite small, so they're not competing with each other. So basically what I've done is I've clear embossed over the top of it, and then I'm using some black Soot Distress ink. Now you can see me twisting it a little bit as I'm applying the ink. That's just to make sure that it gets down into all the little bits, because like I said, the stamp is quite grungy, and you really want to make sure that you get good coverage. One thing that you want to be sure to not do is to put too much ink on, because it can seep through the paper and show underneath the clear embossing. That's if you put on way too much. But like you can see there, that didn't take much for me to do. So I've done this same technique on 4 different panels, cut them all to size and adhered them to black cardstock. So all of my cards have the same basic elements. I'm just going to be adding something a little extra to all of them to create different cards, which is what makes these cards really quick and easy to make, but you still have a cool technique. So this first one I'm adding a purple seam binding bow to. You'll notice that I'm a bit particular about my bows. I always make sure that the knot before I tie the bow is nice and firm, and I don't adhere the seam binding to the back of the cardstock, and that's so that I can move the bow around if I'm not sure about the placement. So I decided to add a sentiment to this first card, and this is from many of my smiles. I really love this sentiment. I think it's really sweet. So I've black embossed that on the top of the cardstock, and then I'm going to add my panel. Now behind the panel I've put some foam adhesive just to raise it up a little bit. So you can see that it's a very simple card, but because of the technique it really does pop out. And so they're just trimming the seam binding. I always find with trimming ribbon it's a good idea to have a pair of sharp dressmaking scissors if you have them on hand. This next one's really simple. I'm just adding some texture by putting some net ribbon behind using double-sided tape and then adhering the whole thing to a card front. I really like the effect this has. It's nice and simple. You can give it for any occasion. So that's just adhered straight down there with some Ranger Wonder tape. The next card is just as simple. It uses a sentiment instead of having some ribbon, and I think it's quite masculine. So I've used the Celebrate stamp from Good Times Begin. Now if you're anything like me and you're mass producing cards, you tend to get bored after a while, so I'm trying something different with some ribbon. I've adhered some black twill ribbon straight onto that card, that panel front. Then I've got 2 more pieces that I've adhered together at the top. The top piece is shorter than the underneath piece. You'll see why in a moment. I'm creating a loop here. So you can see I've got some tape on top of the first piece of black twill, and I'm creating a loop. I've got some double-sided tape also where my fingers are, so that I can push down on the center of that loop and it will stay in place. I hope all this makes sense. So you press that bit down, adhere it down to the first piece, and then press down in the middle here, you'll just see me do in a second, so that that stays down. Now the reason I'm doing the whole bow like this rather than winding it around the entire panel is I want the card to stay relatively flat for posting. So once you've done that first loop, you do the same again with the second loop. So I've just got some double-sided tape again just around that top bit so that I can stick that loop down and also press down in the middle to make that loop stay in place. So it's pretty easy, just need to give it a go. And as you can see here, it stays relatively flat for mailing. So there's my card set. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.